So yesterday evening, we spent the evening discussing the topic of the month of Kartik. And it was a very nice discussion. Lots of nice understandings too. And today, I thought to speak about Srinivasa Acharya, because tomorrow is his appearance day, and I'm going to be at a university program, so I can't speak about him tomorrow evening. So I thought I'd speak about him this evening, because his position, I'm intimidated by this massive garland. Okay. The continuation of disciplic succession is very important. So let's spend a little bit of time discussing our disciplic succession. The disciplic succession that we're part of is all the way from Lord Brahma, who received the knowledge directly from Tene Brahma Hrida Adikavye Moyanti Atsurayaha. Lord Brahma received that knowledge directly imparted within his heart. He also had direct discussion with Garbhodakshay Vishnu, his source and his father. And a very interesting, from Brahma to Narada, from Narada to Vyas, and where is Vyasadeva anyways? Vyasadeva, according to the scriptures, he is situated in the Himalaya regions. The place we visited, we will be visiting during, virtually at least, during the Thanksgiving holiday, Vyas Guha, the cave where Vyas resided when he was dictating Mahabharata to Ganesh. There's a place in way up in Badrinath. So a person who visited him there was Madhvacharya. Madhvacharya? Madhvacharya. I was looking to get some acknowledgement. Madhvacharya. So Madhvacharya, of course we know of Madhvacharya, but he received transcendental knowledge, received verification of the commentaries that he had written by 2 visits in what's called Upper Badri. Upper Badri means there's the Badri that we can go to, and then there's a higher region, and there's a higher region, and there's a higher region that worldly people normally don't have access to. But Madhvacharya did, and he received knowledge from Vyas directly. So Madhvacharya, and then his disciplic line, based primarily in Udupi, and then in course of time, Madhavendra Puri, Ishvara Puri, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was a disciple of Ishvara Puri, and Madhavendra Puri was his spiritual master in the line of Madhvacharya. And from the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there were many who were perfectly realized persons. Foremost amongst them, the names of Rupa and Sanatana Goswami are found amongst the 6 Goswamis. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Rupa and Sanatan, their nephew and the direct Diksha disciple of Rupa Goswami was Jiva Goswami. And Jiva Goswami gave thorough instructions and training to three personalities, and Srinivasa Acharya was one of those three. So, very important. The continuation of disciplic succession was through those three that Jiva Goswami trained. Now, a little bit about Jiva Goswami. Jiva Goswami was most prolific amongst the six Goswamis. He wrote volumes and volumes and volumes. Not necessarily the most important, but foundational in establishing the teaching, the tattva of Lord Chaitanya's teachings. Foremost amongst his Jiva Goswami's writings were the Sandarbhas, 6 in number, Sat Sandarbhas, Bhagavat Sandarbha, Krishna Sandarbha, Bhakti Sandarbha, Paramatma Sandarbha, and so forth. Priti Sandarbha, Bhakti Sandarbha. So, comprehensively, he took it was a type of commentary that was by topic rather than chapter by chapter. He wrote a commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam that was chapter by chapter, like Prabhupada did, called Krama Sandarbha. The reason for going into all this is he wrote comprehensively and established in a foundational way the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Here's how he did it. It's really simple. The teachings of Lord Chaitanya are Srimad Bhagavatam. And Srimad Bhagavatam is the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Just like, for example, when Srila Prabhupada was given the assignment by Bhaktisiddhanta to give the teachings of Lord Chaitanya to the English-speaking parts of the world, what did he bring with him? Srimad Bhagavatam. Because the teachings of Lord Chaitanya is Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. There's a seamless one-to-one match. So to establish what Jiva Goswami did was to establish the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, he wrote 4 commentaries on Srimad Bhagavatam. I'm chuckling because it's like inconceivable. And one of those was topic by topic. That's the Sandarbhas. It's really a great masterpiece. And many other writings given by Jiva Goswami to the world, and he thoroughly instructed those teachings to 3 individuals: Srinivasa Acharya, Narottam Das Thakur, and Shyamananda. By name, those are the 3 names of the 3 personalities. And they carried forward the Sampradaya, the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, and very effectively distributed the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, or the teachings of Bhakti, throughout the land. It's some interesting history. We'll touch on it in a moment. There's a book called Bhakti Ratnakar. Bhakti Ratnakar is basically a who's who following Chaitanya Charitamrita. Anybody that was involved in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela is found in Chaitanya Charitamrita. And then after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's departure comes Bhakti Ratnakar. Bhakti Ratnakar just gives a history of events in the lives of the associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu following his departure. So here's a passage from Bhakti Ratnakar. The Brahmin Chaitanya Das has come here desiring a son. He will soon have one, whom he will name Srinivasa. I will bring scriptures into the world through Sri Rupa and others, and these jewel-like books will be distributed by Srinivasa. Srinivasa is the embodiment of pure love for me. All minds will be enthused upon seeing him. Now these are words that were spoken by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when the Brahmin Chaitanya Das visited him in Puri. Now when he came, the Brahmana was desiring a son. It wasn't like his wife was already pregnant or something, but the Lord Chaitanya gave the forecast. He will have a son. Here's the name of his son, and here's what his son is going to do. The writings of Rupa and others will be distributed widely by Srinivasa Acharya. That's what happened. When he was born, there was an astrologer that gave this prediction that he, Srinivasa Acharya, would become a Mahapurusha. The Mahapurusha means there's bodily characteristics of Mahapurusha, but there's also spiritual characteristics of a Mahapurusha. And Srinivasa Acharya lived up to the astrological forecast. After his father's death, Srinivasa accepted Narahari Sarkar in nearby Srikhand as his Shiksha Guru, upon whose advice he traveled to Puri to see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu before he departed. So, Srinivasa Acharya was born during the duration of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's life. When he was there, he met all the senior Vaishnavas, and he studied Srimad Bhagavatam under Gadadhar Pandit Goswami. And in course of time, after visiting many sacred places en route to Vrindavan, he accepted Diksha from Gopal Bhatta Goswami. So one of the 6 Goswamis, Gopal Bhatta Goswami. By this time, Gopal Bhatta Goswami was living in Vrindavan, and Srinivasa Acharya accepted Diksha from him. So here's a nice painting that shows the names of the 3. Again, Shyamananda, Narottam Das Thakur, Srinivasa Acharya. They were students, not Diksha disciples, but students of Jiva Goswami. And here's a more modern painting of the same. So he accepted all 3 of them, thoroughly instructed them in the writings of the Goswamis, his own writings, as well as Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and Sanatan Goswami's Hari Bhakti Vilas, and the essential teachings to understand who is Lord Chaitanya and his teachings. In addition to their scriptural study, all 3 had developed a particular kirtan style. And later on, They wrote many bhajans, particularly Narottam Das Thakur wrote many, many bhajans, and those bhajans of Narottam Das Thakur are scripture. The Acharyas confirmed. So they're vastly learned and musically inclined, and the kirtan style was very simple and practical way for people that weren't literate to understand the philosophy just by hearing songs and hearing the songs, and slowly they would start to understand the philosophy because it's embedded within the songs. It's very practical. Now, for some period of time, Vrindavan was the headquarters. They were the headquarters because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had assigned all 6 of the 6 Goswamis, and the followers of the 6 Goswamis followed the 6 Goswamis to Vrindavan. So Vrindavan became like the epicenter of Shastra study and understanding of who was Lord Chaitanya. However, in course of time, there are other parts of India, particularly in the eastern parts of India, particularly Bengal, and that part of the country where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was well known, but the teachings of Lord Chaitanya weren't so well known. And so the surviving wife of Lord Nityananda, her name was Janava. Very good. So Janava contacted Jiva Goswami and made a request. She wrote a letter, and a messenger carried the letter, requesting, please provide manuscript copies of all the writings of the Goswamis and send them to the eastern part of India, so the people over here can understand Lord Chaitanya's teachings. So Jiva Goswami, one of the many things that he did was he had scribes. Because there weren't printing presses, they made hand copies of the writings of the 6 Goswamis. He had the original manuscripts, Jiva Goswami's own handwriting, Rupa Goswami's own handwriting, everyone's original, and then copies were made, and the copies were placed on a bullock cart. And the bullock cart was sent in the direction of eastern India. Something very unfortunate happened. There's a little detail. There was a king whose name was Veer Hambir, and his kingdom was Vana Vishnupur, and he had an astrologer in his court. And the astrologer informed the king, coming into your kingdom is a bullock cart loaded with valuable items. You want wealth, right? Find that bullock cart and take possession of the bullock cart, and you'll become very wealthy. He thought it was jewels or something like that. So in the dead of night, when the 3, Srinivasa, Shyamananda, and Narottam Das Thakur, along with their entourage, were asleep, the bullock cart was stolen. And when the 3 and their entourage woke up in the morning, the bullock cart was gone. They were in great distress, because it's rare hand-copied writings of the 6 Goswamis. So a decision was made after some careful consideration and prayer that 2 of those 3 would go forward, and the 3rd, Srinivasa Acharya, would stay behind and try to find the missing bullock cart. And in course of time, he found out where the detail was, King Virhambir was told that there's a sadhu in your country, in your kingdom. So he invited Srinivasa Acharya to his kingdom and received him very nicely and wanted to hear from him. And after hearing from him, the king acknowledged, you had a bullock cart. Well, I stole the bullock cart. And if you like the bullock cart, I'll give it back. So in course of time, this King Virhambir, became a Vaishnava, just by Srinivasa Acharya's association, as well as he gave back the bullock cart. So the bullock cart made its way the rest of the way to the eastern part of India. So the original teachings of the 6 Goswamis were made available to that part of the world, that part of the country at least. So this practice of book distribution was a very early practice. Very early practice. In course of time, Srinivasa Acharya settled and established a place of residence, a place known as Yajigram. And here's the formal entryway. And that he had as a dear friend, Srinivasa Acharya had Narottam Das Thakur as his dear friend. And of course, they went to school together and everything, but their personalities were so alike. Their musical style was somewhat different, but their personalities matched so much. So often, Narottam Das Thakur would frequent and pay visits to Srinivasa Acharya. There's a very celebrated event that's described in great detail, but they happened one day. They're sitting up on a hill. Where they sat is very clear. It's a little rise. There's a tree in the top of the rise, and then down below there's a pathway. Then it was a roadway, and there was a wedding. And the person seated in the wedding was Ramchandra Kaviraj. Later he became Kaviraj, the learned Kavi. And they purposefully spoke very loudly, laughing at Ramchandra Kaviraj being so filled with pomp and splendor and on his wedding day and showing lavish opulence, and what a fool this fellow is, sitting there in this palanquin going on his way to his marriage. And Ramchandra heard what they had said, and they knew that they were poking fun. He knew that they were sadhus. So after some time, Ramchandra came back and made the acquaintance of Narottam Das Thakur and Srinivasa Acharya, and in course of time, he became their disciple. And so at this place, this is a very old painting or drawing, and there you see they all have hair. Srinivasa Acharya was a grahasta. Ramchandra Kaviraj was a grahasta. Narottam Das Thakur was not. He was a celibate young man. And on their altar, we're going to take a look at the altar at Yajigram. And here at the top, Nitai Gauranga Mahaprabhu. Nitai Gauranga Mahaprabhu, that very tall neem deities in the center. Those were Srinivasa Acharya's deities. Here's a close-up of his deities. And down below of his deities, there's Radha Krishna deities. Radha Krishna deities. that he personally worshipped. And this is his Bhajan Kutir place. This is a common image. Sometimes you'll see this image. Now you know where it's from. It's his Bhajan Kutir in Yajigram. There's a little bit of history. Narahari Sarkar of Srikhand, we heard his name already, right? Narahari Sarkar was a person who gave some instructions to Srinivasa Acharya, instructed him while Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was still on earth, go to Puri and take his association. So the mother of Narahari Sarkar was Lakshmi Priya. And Advaita, he saw Narahari and Advaita Acharya in his dream. Srinivasa accepted Ishwari in marriage. And she was the devoted daughter of Gopal Chakravarti of Yajigram. So in course of time, his marriage was through a dream or inspired by a dream, and he became a grahastha. This very same person who from his childhood inspired him to go to Puri instructed him in a dream to marry this young Brahmani girl, Gopal Chakravarti daughter. Here's a painting where Narottam Das Thakur is depicted with Ramchandra Kaviraj, who became the Diksha disciple of Srinivasa Acharya. So these are just some very old style and ancient paintings of Srinivasa Acharya. Here's side by side Srinivasa Acharya and Narottam Das Thakur. And on the right side, this is on the altar, this is Narottam Das Thakur himself. Now there's a tree, those of you that may visit Yajigram sometime, you'll see this place. There's a tree that is said to have grown from a toothbrush of Srinivasa Acharya. Now, during their time, they didn't have plastic toothbrushes. Toothbrushes were neem twigs, and then the neem twig was used as a toothbrush. So after some time, when he used his toothbrush, he stuck it in the ground. And later that neem tree grew from that toothbrush. Now this is a parikram party visiting the place. That's their Bornatai deities and a little altar there. But in the background, that's the neem tree. And here's another photograph of the neem tree. Near his house in Yajigram, there's a Pila Pukur, or yellow pond. So there's a similar Pili Pukur in Vrindavan. Here's a nice final image. This is a very old painting. From left to right, Narottam Das Thakur. Then next to him, Srinivasa Acharya. And then Shyamananda Pandit, Sri Rasikananda, and Ramchandra Kaviraj. So they would meet at Yajigram because it was like the central, geographically central place that was easy for them to come together. And together they would discuss topics of Krishna Bhakti. So, one more time. Vrindavan, the epicenter for Gaudiya Vaishnavism for quite some time, several decades and generations, it expanded to the eastern parts of India, mainly through the literatures, the writings of the six Goswamis, the edification that had been given to them to understand those teachings properly by Jiva Goswami, and then they're settling in that eastern part of India and propagating very widely the teachings of bhakti. And the teachings of bhakti were both the philosophy and their songs. Because, many people in that part of the land weren't well educated, but they all spoke Bengali. So they could hear the Bengali songs of these three personalities, and they would learn the philosophy. And a nice way to learn the philosophy is because, music is universal. Everybody loves music. And through the medium of music, they would learn. And that's how the tradition was carried forward. And you probably know that up until the time of our founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, I'll share this with you. Prabhupada loved kirtan. Hare Krishna kirtan. But he also loved bhajans. There was a period of time when I had, one of the services I had in the Brooklyn Temple, Henry Street Temple in Brooklyn, I was temple commander. And one of the things about temple commander, there's no job description. The job temple commander meant if something needed to be done, you found somebody to do it. And if you couldn't find somebody to do it, you'd do it yourself. So that was the job description, unwritten. So one of the things that happened when Prabhupada would visit is day and night and day, and devotees would run around and do stuff to assist, Harinam Sankirtan and, all the cooking and thising and thating and paraphernalia. And the Brooklyn Temple had a courtyard behind it. It was like a big tall wall, but it was the neighborhood that wasn't a safe neighborhood. So we had to guard Prabhupada's quarters. The configuration of the temple was a rented building, and it was called the double brownstone because the cladding on the outside was brownstone, so it was called the brownstone. All the houses in that neighborhood were brownstones. And just a little bit walk up, over here on the left side, that's where the temple room was. And on the right side, that's where Prabhupada's quarters were. And, the Prabhupada's quarters were big, just like the temple room was big. And he had the whole side on the whole floor. So towards the back was his study, his desk. A little over there was a bedroom, and then next to the bedroom was a little kitchen where the devotees that would prepare prasadam for Prabhupada could do the cooking. And then in the front area was his sitting room. The sitting room is when gatherings would come and he would hold darshan and they would sit in that space. Or what happened at night, he would go into the front room. This is my observation, because I had to guard Prabhupada's quarters. When everyone was completely exhausted because of running around, who wanted to guard Prabhupada's quarters? Nobody. So if you're the temple commander, that means that you do it, because that's what a temple commander does. You find somebody. So I sat outside his window. There's a little wrought iron fire escape thing. So I sat there, and then I observed what Prabhupada's behaviors were, or pattern. And what happened was, at around 8:30, so the evening Bhagavad Gita class was 7:30 until 8. And it was pretty punctual, ending on time, 8:15 max. And then he'd go into his room, sometimes, meet with people, and then he'd go to the front room and sit just himself with harmonium and sing bhajans. Now, I don't understand Bengali, but he would sing in Bengali. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur bhajans, or Narottam Das Thakur bhajans, or Bengali bhajans. And he would sing for about 20 minutes, just eyes closed and immersed in the songs of our Acharyas. And then that was it. And around 10 o'clock at night, he'd go to his room, and the light would go out. It was very regulated. And then at 12:30 in the morning, the light would go on. He'd go into the bathroom, brush his teeth, and whatever else he did. And then he'd come out, and at a desk, little light would go on his desk, and he'd sit for about 2.5 to 3 hours engaging in writing the Bhaktivedanta purports. But as much as the dedication to the Bhaktivedanta purports was his life and soul, bhajan was also a very important part of his life. There are certain devotees that like bhajans. One of those devotees that liked bhajans very much was Mother Jamuna. Maybe you know something about Mother Jamuna, but she was like a super cook, and she was a super kirtan singer. But Prabhupada trained her in deity worship. Personally trained her in all 3 areas. So she was an amazing personality. But she knew, and she loved, and she would sing. And then in addition to, after she was trained by Prabhupada, she trained other devotees. The style, because there are different styles of kirtan. Just like, as we already saw just a moment ago, each of the 3 had their own style. And she became, a connoisseur. It's because Prabhupada was a connoisseur. He trained her, so she knew the different styles of Bengali bhajans. So it's a whole genre of communicating, training, and educating the ways of devotional life. And Prabhupada had it, and he transferred it to certain devotees. She was one, and there were others that had particular. Agni Dev. Maybe that you don't know that person. Agni Dev was a Prabhupada disciple based in Laguna Beach, and he is from a part of the world, I forget, somewhere, I forget where. And he had a very sweet voice, and he liked kirtan very much. He liked bhajans very much. So he was very expert in. So certain devotees had become trained and were good singers, very sweet. And then in addition to singing the bhajan, they'd explain the bhajan and give the teachings through the medium of that singing. It's nice. It's a nice way to learn. So these 3 each had those abilities. And very powerful. Identified by Jiva Goswami as capable of assimilating. And we heard already from Bhakti Ratnakar, Mahaprabhu indicated, even before he was born, that Srinivasa Acharya's name and what he would do, and he would take the teachings of the Goswamis and distribute them to the rest of the world. And so he did. So that's our little topic for this evening. on Srinivasa Acharya. There was also going to be a Bhagavatam installation, but I thought it would take some time for discussion to see if there's some topics any of you would like to discuss about Srinivasa Acharya or these three and the way of disciplic succession.
So the line that comes from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that comes through Srila Narottam Das Thakur, right? Not in the disciplic chain, it comes through the Narottam Das Thakur, right?
Well, you're singling Narottam Das Thakur. And I don't know if Bhaktivinoda Thakur was in disciplic succession from Narottam Das Thakur. I don't know. But there's those three. The main message that I wanted to communicate is they continued the line. And then subsequent generations, there were others before Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that the teaching came through that line. And we're also in that same line. So whether it was Narottam Das Thakur, Srinivasa Acharya, or Shyamananda, I don't know. But the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu through them. Okay? Okay, we'll shift attention then to Srimad Bhagavatam. I'll say a little bit, first of all, in relation to our Goswamis. I started explaining it, I'll do it further. Jiva Goswami wrote many, many books. Of those many, many books, 4 of those books that he wrote were commentaries on Srimad Bhagavatam. One of those commentaries on Srimad Bhagavatam is called Gopal Champu. Gopal Champu is a particular... Champu is... Jiva Goswami was such a scholar that he wrote a book on how to write a champu. Like, what is it? And what are the elements that make a book a champu? And then he wrote one. Gopal Champu. And Gopal Champu has 2 parts. It's Krishna in Vrindavan, Krishna out of Vrindavan. 2 parts. Gopal Champu. But about Gopal, about Krishna. And another I mentioned, Krama Sandarbha, was a verse by verse like Prabhupada did for the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. And then he wrote a commentary on the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's a very interesting way that he used. Senior to him, senior to all the Goswamis, was Sanatana Goswami, who wrote a commentary on the 10th canto Bhagavatam. And Sanatana Goswami recognized Jiva Goswami as super scholar. So he, Sanatana Goswami, asked him, please edit my commentary on the 10th canto. Vaishnava Toshani is the title. So Jiva Goswami accepted the service, and he wrote a tika on Vaishnava Champu. No, what is it? The 10th canto commentary. Gosh, the memory. wrote a commentary on Sanatana Goswami's 10th canto commentary. So 4, and plus the Sandarbhas, along with many other writings, of course. But, the teachings of Lord Chaitanya were the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam, and vice versa. So, threadbare, Jiva Goswami was particularly knowledgeable and brilliant in his scholarship. So, he compiled all of that. It was he was such a person that Rupa Goswami entrusted his own handwriting manuscripts to Jiva Goswami to keep in safekeeping, because he had a place to keep it. Rupa Goswami was living under a tree. Jiva Goswami was living at the Radha Damodar temple. The deity of Radha Damodar was given by Rupa Goswami to Jiva Goswami. Rupa Goswami personally carved the deity for him. And he had a place. So he had a place that was safety, because, out in the forest under a tree is not safe. So Jiva Goswami kept the original manuscripts. Later, those original manuscripts, which were in the safekeeping of the Radha Damodar temple, were transferred to the Vrindavan Institute. So the original manuscripts of Rupa Goswami are preserved. Original manuscripts are preserved. It's a big deal having, not just like, it's a collector's item, but, there's a way to verify, was this particular statement in Rupa Goswami's own writings, or was it later interpolated and added? You follow what I'm saying? Because there are passages that are like that. And people question, was this interpolated? Was it just subjectively superimposed, and it wasn't really the part of the original writings of somebody, one of this Acharya or that Acharya? So having the original manuscripts is a way to verify. Here's a case in point. A case in point is that Mahabharata, there's no solid manuscript. There's no manuscript for Mahabharata. So what's Mahabharata? Ganguly and his writing, but according to Madhvacharya, there's no standard text, and there are discrepancies in what was known even during Madhvacharya's time, what to speak of generations later and generations later. So what's the original Mahabharata? Raise your shoulders, and there's the answer. We can't say. We don't know. There's a story. Most people know the story. Are there parts of it that are interpolated? Probably. And what are those parts that are interpolated, and what's the genuine? But, there's Mahabharata, Ganguly's version. That's like, anyway. So having the original manuscripts is a big deal. It's a way to verify. What Rupa Goswami wrote was in the manuscripts. And similarly what Jiva Goswami wrote. And then the other Goswamis, their literatures, Sanatana Goswami also turned over his writings to Jiva Goswami. And they were kept and preserved carefully, meticulously. And even till today. So, the Srimad Bhagavatam, we do have the manuscripts. We have, we know from beginning to end. You probably have read there are certain passages where a word or two or three differ between this version of Srimad Bhagavatam and that version of Srimad Bhagavatam. They're minor, they're not major, but you're still knowing what's the original and what's not the original. It's for scholars, it's important. And the Srimad Bhagavatam that we have with the Bhaktivedanta purports is the same Srimad Bhagavatam that Bhaktisiddhanta accepted, that prior to him Bhaktivinoda Thakur accepted, and so on, going back into cyclic succession, what our great Acharyas have as commentaries on the original Srimad Bhagavatam. So to have the gift that Prabhupada gave the world is a great treasure, because, as we've been saying 4 times now, it's the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, the teachings of pure devotion. And less than pure or mixed devotion is very common, or more common than pure devotion. Pure devotion is very, very rare, very special. And what is it? So through the course of 12 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam, not just the 10th canto Bhagavatam, but all 12 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam, it very clearly delineates what pure devotion is and what mixed devotion is, and the complications that come from less than pure devotion. Currently, I'm spending time with the devotees in China going over the 9th canto Bhagavatam. We've been going through the entire Srimad Bhagavatam, section by section. And we're in the 9th canto of the Bhagavatam. It's really nice. And one of the features of the 9th canto Bhagavatam is it's preparing the way for Krishna's appearance, the 10th canto. So, one of the themes in the 9th canto is when there were kings in the line of the Moon Dynasty, Sun Dynasty, and the Moon Dynasty, because Krishna appeared in the Moon Dynasty. So that those dynasties of kings, from Surya or Vivaswan, and descendants of Vivaswan, or Vivasvata Manu, and and so forth. And many of those personalities and sages that were prominent during those times, they had some flaw. Some kings became pure, like Maharishi Ambarish, and some kings had some mix. And those kings that had some mix, or some sages that had some mix, they had some problem, like major problem. Sobri Muni, and there's all these histories that indicate how impurity can become removed completely through bhakti. That's a theme in the 9th canto, to prepare the way for Krishna's appearance. Bhakti is the means to completely eradicate impurity. And when impurity is not completely eradicated, it brings a problem. And different types of problems. Like it's a very interesting 9th canto. It's a very interesting canto. In the 9th canto, we also hear about Lord Ramachandra. The several chapters, 4 chapters, about Lord Ramachandra, because he appeared in the Sun Dynasty. So that first half of Canto 9. So obviously he's not in the category of a mixed personality. He's the personality of Godhead. So, but there's mixes that go along with that whole narration. So, by reading Srimad Bhagavatam in short, we're given entrance into unmixed bhakti, and how unmixed bhakti cures any of the shortcomings and contaminations of material existence, up to and including the appearance of Lord Ramachandra, and the appearance of Krishna, the appearance of Lord Nrsingadev, the primary Vamana Dev, and so forth, personalities that gave shelter to those great devotees who became purified by the shelter of the personality of Godhead in pure devotion. So it's a very special literature. There's no literature that compares to it. That's an easy statement to make. There's no literature that compares to it. There's a whole section in Padma Purana called the Bhagavad Mahatmya section, like big section, glorifying the Srimad Bhagavatam. There are, of the 18 Puranas, half of those 18 Puranas have a major section that are glorifying Bhagavad Purana, the Srimad Bhagavatam, because amongst the Puranas is special, and they know it, and they speak it, they express it. And so here we are with Srimad Bhagavatam. We don't have to go through all those other literatures to get the conclusion. We just get the conclusion handed to us. And because it's so readily available, we may take it for granted. Here's a nice example. Sanatana Goswami was born in a Brahmana family. When he was a young boy, from his previous lifetime, he had a fascination for Srimad Bhagavatam. One evening, in his dream, he dreamed that a Brahmana came to visit him, and the Brahmana gave him a gift, a handwritten copy of Srimad Bhagavatam. And he was so joyful, and he woke up feeling very joyful. That very morning, that very same Brahmana, not just in his dream, but in person, came to his door, knock, 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 and gave him Srimad Bhagavatam. He understood it was prophetic. And the rest of his life, from childhood, it was immersed in Srimad Bhagavatam. Throughout his life, immersed in Srimad Bhagavatam. And of course, he wrote his commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam. As I mentioned, Vaishnava Toshini was the 10th canto Bhagavatam commentary. And then he wrote Brihat Bhagavatamrita, and then a commentary on Brihat Bhagavatamrita. It's very amazing literature with all kinds of references, very amazing literature. So Bhagavatam is the point, summary. Bhagavatam is the life of the followers of Lord Chaitanya, to give to the world, as Lord Chaitanya came to give to the world, Krishna Prema. And the Bhagavatam gives it. And especially with the commentary of our previous Acharyas, we can find things in the Bhagavatam that are just delightful and purifying. And it's a way that one's life can become perfect. Along with chanting of the Mahamantra, the reading, regularly assimilating the message of Srimad Bhagavatam. Just a little while ago, we were observing the disappearance day of Srila Prabhupada, yes? And one of the topics that we discussed was the Markandeya Bhagavad Dharma, the prayer that Prabhupada wrote, and on one of the verses, Prabhupada writes, I don't know how my speaking is going to be understood, but I have faith that these two things, faith in the holy name and faith that people, by regularly hearing in a systematic way the message of Srimad Bhagavatam, they'll understand. Even not so well educated or people from different backgrounds, they'll understand. The potential to understand is found within Srimad Bhagavatam, to understand transcendence. For people who are worldly, to understand transcendence is like mission impossible. But mission impossible becomes possible through this very wonderful sound vibration, Srimad Bhagavatam. So we're blessed. The previous Acharyas made it available. Our founder Acharya abundantly made it available. And a revolution, a spiritual revolution can take place or is taking place in the unfortunate lives of so many people. Their lives of suffering and being lost and lonely and depressed and all kinds of other unfortunate circumstances of life can be completely transformed by this wonderful topic of Srimad Bhagavatam. So I think it's time to go to a little arti for Srimad Bhagavatam and the receiving of Srimad Bhagavatam in the home. Who's home? Yes. And your wife is somewhere. There she is. Okay. So I'm going to perform arti for Srimad Bhagavatam. And